welcome to Optics, featured artists in the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM. I'm Krista Dix, I'm the Executive Director of the Griffin Museum, and we're so pleased to have you with us for this special edition of Optics. The Power of Three on the walls of the gallery at WinCAM is a masterclass from our Griffin educational program under the instruction of fine art photographer Arno Minkkinen. 7 artists held a workshop to spark their creativity. Students were asked to provide 3 references at the start of the class, broadening their view to what is possible as an artist and a photographer. Each had the opportunity to build cohesion and purpose as they expand existing visions or discover new directions in their practice. And a little bit about Arno. Arno Raphael Minkkinen is a Finnish-American photographer, essayist, educator, and curator with over 100 solo shows and 200 group exhibitions at galleries and museums worldwide. He holds a Master's of Fine Arts degree from Rhode Island School of Design, studying there with Harry Callahan and Aaron Siskind. His teaching career began in Finland in 1974 at the University of Industrial Arts in Helsinki, Aalto University today. He served as an assistant professor at the MIT Creative Photography Lab, together from 1977 to 1981, where monthly exhibitions, high-profile lecture series, and a graduate program were initiated, including the New American Nudes exhibition and catalog Minkkinen curated in 1981. The CPL years are currently part of the ongoing new MIT Museum's retrospective exhibitions. Minkkinen also served as a visiting professor at VV École des Arts Appliquées in Switzerland from 1994 to 2003.
So my name is Arno Raphael Minkkinen, and I'm an emeritus professor at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and I've been honored to have a workshop program that I could teach here at the Griffin Museum photography. And I've prepared some questions for my students who have been with me for the last 5 sessions. We worked through the whole spring, and we have an exhibition here where their work is featured. The title of the workshop is called The Power of Three, and it's a tool for finding your own pathway in photography. And the questions that I'm asking pertain to the individual's direction, way of working, things like that. So they're here, and each one is different. They don't know the question, nor does the class know the question. So I'm going to find Kevin here, Kevin Bellinger, and it looks like there's a question coming up. Here it is.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to read it, and I'll be doing this with everyone.
Yes.
But I can read it to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Has the elegance of your framing caused subject matter to take a backseat in your photography during this search for a pathway in our Power of Three workshop? Or has your pristine visual orchestration actually opened up a new world of content and or visual strategies yet to be explored, such as color, installation, sequencing, or things like that? Or, with these works and more, has black and white and composition now become your default eye?
Okay. The quick answer is the elegance of the framing doesn't take from the work. Yes to the second, and I think yes to the third. I'm getting more and more intrigued and into black and white, which I did a very long time ago. I spent a lot of time in the dark room. Now I'm into digital. But the simplicity and the emotional distance of black and white is appealing to me more and more, because in this world generally, everything is becoming more and more emotional and less logical. And sometimes, depending on the subject matter, you would have to do color, you know, obviously. Right. Even at night, I love night photography, even though I haven't done any for here. But generally speaking, I'm more and more attracted to black and white.
I like this. It's actually operates that you actually do get to emotion. It would be my response, because you keep your distance.
Right.
You leave room for us you know, your objectivity creates subjectivity
Right.
in the viewer.
Yeah.
And it doesn't crowd us out of our own feeling.
Right.
And that's why I've so enjoyed the work you've done
Yeah,
in
thank
the
you.
workshop. And I thank you very much. I'm going to give you your question.
Oh, great.
So I'm going to fold it like that.
Oh, that's great. I'm not going to let anybody see it either.
Yeah, but, yeah, it's for you. They'll see it when they hear it.
Okay. All right.
Kevin, thanks so much.
Thank you, Arno.
Okay,
All right.
Kiitos.
Okay.
Let's finish.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce Ping Weber, and I want to share a question with you. It's different from everybody else's.
Yeah.
And it's here. And when we're done with your answer, I'll probably have some comments to make on your answer as well.
Okay.
Here you are. So I'm going to read it, and there's probably some explanation within this that I'll describe. Well, you'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Do we learn to become spiritual, or is spiritual something that already exists within us, something we just have to tap into? In my film script, I have a scene where I'm discussing the word faith with my father. He asks me to imagine a kite flying so high it disappears into the clouds. Is it still there? He asks me. I say yes. He says, well, how do you know? You can't see it. And I say, yes, but I can feel it. Well, that's faith, my father says. So the question for you is,
Yes.
do we have to see the spiritual, or can we have faith that it exists without having it be seen? That, like the string, we can feel it. That a photograph can express it without showing it. So that in the final analysis, the photograph becomes the string. Your thoughts?
Oh, for me personally, it's always about feeling. It's an intuition. I just feel the energy that is there. Something bigger than me is always there. And even though where I come from, I was influenced by Christianity and Buddhism, but it wasn't a learned behavior. It was always, I have this, my mother told me I have this, and I always feel, when I walk into a room, I can feel the atmosphere, the energy, or what is beyond this energy. So it's always been like that, even when I was a child.
So it started before the photography?
Yeah, even before. I'm always a very sensitive child when I grow up. And I was the oldest child, and I have a lot of time on my own because my mother have a few children, like my brother and two sisters afterwards. So I have a lot of time on my own to take care of myself. So I always go out of my way to do my own things.
Right.
So I'm very in touch with my own feelings. So I have I would say that's faith, complete faith in I'm being taken care of by something. It's just natural to me.
So the photograph operates as a kind of a confirmation to you?
Yeah.
That the faith and the spiritual are alive in you, and you can share them, and it becomes your. I see it as the message in your work.
Yeah.
That you halt us, and take the speed out of the accelerator of the car or whatever.
Yeah.
And give us license to contemplate, and that's a very meaningful and a kind of a rare attribution to a pathway in photography, I would think.
I was thinking, Arno, when I first started photography, there was this one occasion, a lady from Sweden, she told me about this Minna White quote, which is famous.
Yeah.
He said, don't photograph what is there, photograph what is not there. Back then, I didn't understand it so much, but now, as I get older, that's what really I aspire to do. I'm not trying to be descriptive what it is. I'm really creating work that has personal meaning. Hopefully it transpires to my audience too. But I used to think this work I'm making is just only meaningful to myself, but I have other people who feel touched by my work. So I think if people are in tune, it may be a very niche, small audience, but when they're touched, they're deeply touched too. So I think there are other people who appreciate it, what I'm doing. Although it is not appealing to everyone, and I know it, I know my work doesn't speak to a lot of people, but I'm just holding on to it, especially after this workshop with you. The term you use, spiritual aura, has so much meaning to me, because that's what I'm trying to say is there's something beyond just the technical part of a photograph. I have to put meaning in it.
Yeah, I would, just say this, that it's also your determination that I sense, and your determination to not bend your work to what might be a genre fad or something like that.
Yeah.
And that with that determination, I think your audience will start to expand.
Yeah, I'm confident about that. I think you have to have that trust in yourself in order to make work that speaks of who you are. I think, especially, after this workshop, that really confirms what I believe in, and I think the writing you gave to me, just a confirmation of what I believe in too. So thank you very much. That has been a great gift, sir.
Yeah. And thank you, Ming. The Finnish word I've been using, or I'm using here, is kiitos.
Yeah.
It means thank you, and you know that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give you your text here, folded.
Yeah. And Arno, in Chinese, we say thank you is 谢谢. So 谢谢. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce Mark Farber, and I have a question for you that is written here on one of these. There it is. This is yours. And so it goes like this. A photograph can be likened to what a steamroller does. It flattens everything. 3D becomes 2D as it arrives on the paper print. But on the computer screen, we don't get the same impression of flatness, no matter how flat the screen is. Yet you, with your beautiful, precisionist way of seeing everything and making it count, achieve the photographic conundrum. Flat as board, flat as a board, from deep or shallow space, as the case may be. When, if you agree with me, did you realize this ability to see in 2D? And why is this important to what you wish your audience to take away?
Thanks for the question. Very thoughtful and specific to me. So I'll start by saying that, one of the key things any photographer does is to look at an infinite world and draw a frame around it. We have to stand in a place, pick an equipment and a set of adjustments so that we select a little piece, or a big piece, but some rectangular piece out of a non-rectangular infinite view. So I think I realized that I lean toward, not always, but often lean toward flat-ish landscapes. As you know, I think of myself as a landscape photographer, but not traditional pretty scenes in the countryside.
In a different kind of landscape.
Urban landscape, it's often called. Sometimes down, up, sometimes at flat things like the side of a building, but sometimes at a distant scene. And so I think this notion of drawing a box around a part of an infinite view was part of my realization of what I like to do, and that sort of led me to flat-ish views.
I like that idea, because the first time you just said that before, that is, the moment you do that, you're in 2D, but to me, what I so appreciate in what you've done it's a little bit, there's a photographer named Frank Golke who photographed grain elevators, and he said something to the effect that when you're in Iowa or Kansas or wherever these things might be, there's nothing else that sticks up off the ground, and so the challenge of making even that box with that landscape without always just having sky and prairie was to work with the grain elevator. And so it's maybe a good reference, because your photographs are the total opposite of that, because you're working with thousands of grain elevators. Ultimately, I mean, you've got very, very complex and intricate subject matter to have to deal with, and then to be able to put it there in that box the way you do is really quite something.
So the grain elevator is, I think, a great example. If you gave a bunch of photographers the assignment to shoot that grain elevator, we'd all do it differently.
Yeah.
Golke often positions his in the middle of a broader landscape.
Right.
I would probably tend to walk right up to it.
Yeah, I see you doing that.
See the wall, or else take a long
Yeah,
lens.
you would be in everybody's picture.
And find something that, some detail, some architectural structure, umbilical cords to the buildings, as I like to think of it. Part of what I'm trying to do is show infrastructure up close and personal in a way that people might not have noticed if they walked by it.
Yeah, you do make it an individual experience. It's not you would think, from the subject matter that it would be something that, everybody would just identify right away, but you intrigue us inside.
Yeah. Another thing photographers are often taught or instructed is show me something I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I tend instead to think of show me something I've seen before in a way I haven't seen it.
That's beautiful.
And so everybody's seen a grain elevator or a pile of road salt, as in one of my photographs, but trying to show it in a way that you might not have noticed it is what I like doing.
Well, that's where the freshness is. Well, thank you. I'm going to give you this, not to be shared, because everyone will find this online when they watch the program. So,
Very good.
but this is the original question.
Arno,
And
thank you
in
very
Finnish
much.
we say kiitos. So kiitos, and thank you for trusting to take this workshop.
Thank you for the question and all of these experiences. It's been great.
So I want to welcome Mary Pat Reeve. We have a kind of affinity, and I brought her a present. I'm going to give it to her in case she, is at the airport line and needs a baggage. This is a Finnair baggage name for your next trip to Finland.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Actually,
I had extras in case you thought you would take more packages.
maybe, yeah.
But I have a question for you, and I got to find your question here. This is it, and it's about that length. So you know.
Got my
I haven't
list
shown
here.
the length of these things to anybody, but on camera, this is it.
I love all the investment you've put in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
questions.
You capture nature in the midst of its epiphanies. Call it the epiphany moment, in contrast to, say, Henri Cartier-Bresson's decisive moment, which hinged on capturing a precise split-second coincidence of factors with a single press of the shutter button. Those who would shoot in Cartier-Bresson's way, in this way, using the eye's ability to seize multiple happenings in the same moment, can easily become the target and purpose of such work. Meaning just, I got it, right? But more than what those moments reveal about the human condition, as Cartier-Bresson was doing. So he used it for a purpose. If you took your approach to nature and began to photograph people, what might we be likely to see? Could epiphany be the hinge again to hold your pathway together.
Interesting. Yes, I guess I've been thinking about that a lot, because in the workshop we worked a lot on the pathway, and I've been thinking, like, how can I sort of expand within my pathway from nature? But I hadn't thought about people. But yeah, let's see. I think maybe sort of unexpected moments, like maybe expressions or things that are not traditionally captured.
Right.
It's a great question. I love a good question.
And I'm not asking the question in this regard that you should do that. It's more but that thought, how might it find itself in the nature pictures as well? But as your audience expands, you may find that that becomes a kind of a fascinating challenge.
Yes, for sure.
Because what you've done is you've given us the unusual aspect to nature that we don't generally see, and remind us of the community that is within nature, that we, just as we have our communities and how we behave towards each other, that happens in nature, certainly, with animals and living things we can, but you never know. I mean, you can get that sense from trees even. They like to grow together, or
and
those
the
sorts
circles
of metaphors.
Of the redwoods.
And I think what a workshop like this has been about is, we've used the power of three as a tool, and make one and then make a second one that's the same but different, and the same but different. And when you get those three, but it's never been to say that it can't expand, but use that hinge, and that's how people will say, okay, that's what she's doing now, but she hasn't really changed. She's still at it. It'll be kind of the takeaway.
Yeah. I guess a lot of your work is also using nature, like placing yourself in nature in sort of unexpected ways.
That doesn't have any epiphany in it.
Yeah.
It's deliberate. It's
deliberate.
But yours has that gift of chance, and why I wrote about in my question to you about Cartier-Bresson was certainly that in his best work, there's some people who think maybe the moment was more important for him than what it means. But I just sense you've got a nice, delicate thing going on there and strong with the nature work that, I started to think about what would happen. It could be from a distance, it could be, a lot of different things that way.
I've thought a lot about scale, like how can you get the same epiphanies, but by changing the scale, like going to a macro level, or maybe going high, maybe with a drone or something, or just getting above the scene as well. But I haven't thought a lot about people, but yeah. I guess I think my work is maybe a little bit the inverse of Bresson's, in that like I'm approaching the world trying to keep an open mind, like to see things in a new way, and they're usually like slower. They're not that like, there are different elements coming together, but not in the fast way that, like you said, not the decisive moment.
For sure. And the reference wasn't so much to that, but one of the things when you bring that up is that you give, unlike Cartier-Bresson, a difference here again is that he structures the image, the whole of it, and you allow the image to happen, and that's what creates, I think, the epiphany, is that you don't force the picture on a specific thing. You put us in the woods to wait and see what happens when these three swans all decide to get hungry together.
Yes.
Well, kiitos.
Kiitos.
Yeah. We know what that means.
Yes.
I've been using it here for everyone.
Headed to Finland in a couple weeks. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Great.
Good to be back with the Finnish nature and in the nature, as they say.
Well, that's,
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again. Kiitos.
Kiitos.
Okay. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce Susan Darcy Fuller. And I have a question for you, which no one knows. And I'm going to read it. And then within it, there's an opportunity for me to maybe make some comment and back. And as we get to kind of, shaping that answer, then at the end, I fold this up and I give it to you.
Okay.
That's how we do this.
Okay.
And so here we are. Here you are. Okay. Put these away because I have to fold the other. Okay. Since your cinematic eye's emergence during our workshop as a pathway possibility for making moving images within single frames, has your film watching changed in any particular way? Do you watch movies and put them on an imaginary pause to watch as single photographs? Another way of saying this would be to ask if your camera is aware that it has morphed into a movie camera now.
Interesting. So what I've noticed for sure is that when I'm watching films and when I'm watching shows, I am looking a lot more at the framing, and I do stop the record at different points to see how things are framed. So I can't say that I'm choosing different things to look at, but I'm much more interested in how the framing is and the different lighting that's being used and how they're telling stories, especially if it's a slow scene.
Right.
Not when it's going really fast, because I can't capture the moment then.
Right.
But if it's something that's really slowed down, I'm really looking where they're framing the people, where the light is coming from, and how they're showing the action in something that is more still.
Right, and that's what probably makes it move, because if you shot the fast-moving thing, it would be a still from a regular movie, and it would simply be an ordinary picture that way. But in what you've been doing, what you're showing here, are scenes from a reality that we believe. The willing suspension of disbelief happens in the photographs.
Right.
And we're no longer like, or at least my reaction has been to these incredible images of yours, that what happened just before, what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's really been a great revelation to me to try this and to go further with it, because one of the things I love to do is to explore and take my camera with me and capture things as I'm going. But it is like a fantasy for me too, because I like to do it when I'm by myself and I wander around, and it's just fun to kind of create something out of nothing, where I'm not just capturing what's there, but I'm thinking, what would make this interesting to someone else, and how do I make a story out of this? So I'm having more play fun while creating the photographs and making something completely different out of it. So it's really expanded my photographic walks into in a different way that makes it more enjoyable.
Right, and I think also to add to that, and we hadn't maybe discussed it yet in the workshop. This seems to be kind of like a continuous workshop. The emails will still go perfectly fine, but I could see where as you continue this, that to avoid any titles. Yeah. Right, because then you bring it to an end. Right, then you're taking a snippet of something happening, and you don't know where it came from and where it's going, and that could be another signal to the viewer. Why they're just numbered as a way of telling the difference between them. Could be a way to handle that. But the power of three that we've been using as a tool. Can also work by looking back to images that you have, where you say, hey, wait, here's one like this. Right. Also.
Where have I already done this?
Yeah. Oh, you've already
intuitively.
Great. Well, that's a signal to me that you're you're on a pathway. When you start to do that, and you look back to see what you've done, I think for some of the others in the workshop too, I encourage that now. Is that has it been in you all along? I think it's a question to.
Yeah, I think that too. It's like
James.
I think one thing that would be really interesting for me is to show the work more to people and see what their impression is. Do they see a story in this? And what would the story be? You know, and kind of use that as a jumping off point to have a conversation about the work and go into a more fantasy level.
That's also a nice idea. What would the story be?
Right.
Because that becomes not collaborative, but it invites the viewer.
Yeah.
To you know, it's a great question.
Yeah, it's just along the lines of you saying, you know, don't name it, you know, so don't give it something and see kind of where it goes.
Yeah, let it. Yeah, it's almost like let the boat drift out.
Yeah.
Find out on what shore it lands.
Right.
It'll go somewhere.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Sue,
you.
and
I love the class.
Keithos is finished. Thank you. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce James Lebec, and I have a question for you. In these questions that I've been giving, they're all different to the students of the Power of Three workshop.
Okay.
And it's about that length, so you'll know that the question comes out of that.
Okay.
The world in which everyone is gone, a comment made during one of your critiques, continues to fascinate me. I see your pictures as if I am moving from picture to picture without ever seeing anyone, and as if each new location is in the previous image. And I can explain that in a minute, a little more. Never seeing anyone, a kind of AI process going on almost. Maybe it's because your images appear to arrive complete in the very moment you raise the camera to your eye. It's like there's this magnet between your frame and the reality it seizes upon. They need no photographer. Kevin worked in this way, but his framing suggested a totally different narrative pathway to me, meaning it's not similar at all. But there was that little bit of hint there. So let me explain that and then the question. So what I'm sensing is this, that I take a picture, meaning you take the picture, and then you go to that place where you took the picture. From there you take a picture. You go to the place where you took the picture. You get lost. You never see anyone, and we never see you, and it's not a movie. And it doesn't mean that this is how it would, although if I was, editing your book or writing for your book, I would suggest this kind of edit maybe, because that impression of everyone being gone is a metaphysical and existential question that I'm really intrigued by, and I see you leaving these pathways within the photograph for us to come up with that. So the question is this a new development in your photography, or something, and more germane here now, or something you had once possessed but never quite identified?
Well, it makes me think of a question that I've asked myself quite a bit as a photographer, which is, what is the difference between a great scene, absent a photographer, and a great photograph? Often, and it's true of some of the photographs in the show, often, as I'm sure you do and many of us do, I will walk through the city and I'll see photographs all day long. And they get filed away in my mind, and I think about them a lot.
Right.
And I think about the light, and I think about where I was, and and what happens there, and I will often go back without my camera
Oh, okay.
to experience the place again and to think more about what it looks like at different times of day, how different people experience it. The framing for me, and I talked to you a little bit about this, photography for me is very much like poetry.
Right.
Construction, framing, what I select to put in, what I select to keep out,
Right. Yeah.
is all so important to me, and I think about it a lot. Especially when using a 4x5 view camera, which I have since given up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like wasting sheets of film,
That's right.
but I've retained that thought process. So there's very little, I suppose I can admit this, there's very little serendipity
Right.
in the work that I do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, when you create a quote, I don't know if I mentioned in the workshop, is from Georges Braque. I like to use it a lot, which is out of limitations, new forms emerge.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're saying, okay, I'm going to use the 4x5 mentality. It's a limitation.
Yeah.
But you're going to take that limitation and you're going to bring it over. You know.
That's true.
Before you were also mentioning that when you're walking along and you see something, then you even without a camera you see it. But do you sometimes like see something and then take that thought and transpose it to some other kind of thing? What you saw some.
I do a little bit.
Kind of like an invisible dictionary or something.
Well, there are views. And you can probably relate to this. There are either views of within the city, either looking west in the evening or looking east at different times of day. And even sometimes when I'm not walking through the city, I think of, wouldn't such a neighborhood or a certain location be amazing at a certain time of day?
Yeah.
And I think of the waterfront in Boston in the morning versus
such
at
a
night.
Splendid job at the waterfront of Boston.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it's really great.
And one of the photos you selected for the show with me was an afternoon shot of a power plant across the harbor in Everett.
Yeah.
And you know, I think about that view a lot.
Yeah.
And I discovered at certain times of day and certain weather, the water is like glass. It's just, it's, and this is where the poetry comparison comes in.
That poetry's so beautiful in that photograph. I could liken it to something like this. That some seagull or maybe a slower moving bird came to that spot where the pipes or the chimney stacks are reflected in the water and blew on that spot.
Just a little,
so they get
just a little shaking.
You know,
yeah,
because it'd have to be a bird. I mean,
well, and I've had silly thoughts, which was, you know, it could be a Tyrannosaurus Rex marching behind me and making the water shake.
Or a little earthquake.
Or a little earthquake. A friend of mine just asked me, and this gets back to the photography poetry question. A friend of mine asked me what that photograph was about.
Yeah.
And I said to him, your question reminds me of a somewhat famous response that Robert Frost gave to someone when asked to explain one of his poems. He said, "What, should I say it worse?" The point being, It's all there. I hope it's all.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I remember once I was doing in my copywriter days, and I was working, it was a Liberty Mutual radio spot I had written, and so it was Richard Kiley who was doing the reading, famous Broadway star, and he took my script, and it was like a 30-second radio commercial, and he read it through, and I said, "Oh, that's good. Can you do one more?" And he said, "What for?"
Exactly.
And I said, "Thank you. You taught me a great lesson, sir."
Exactly. And one of the unforeseen experience I had through the class was seeing your work, and maybe it was crazy, but your work, I've described my work as experiencing urban landscapes and landscapes throughout my life. Right. And I think I said this to you. Something about your work seemed similar. I mean, in one way, they are totally different, right? But I think I said to you, I find it fascinating that you are always in your photographs, but your photographs are never about you.
Yeah.
And I think those were the relationships between subjects and photographer are part of what started to become more understood by me through this class.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to give you your text here so you don't show it to anybody until we get this thing live. It's been such a great pleasure working with you.
Yeah, you've been wonderful.
And I look forward to emails.
Thank you. Wonderful.
So I'm delighted to introduce you to Leah Abrahams. And Leah, I'm going to read a question here. It's about that length. So it has a lot of stuff in it, and then there's a question that kind of comes out of it. And we've spoken about him before, and this is it's the Museum of Modern Art exhibition of Wolfgang Tillmans, right?
Yes.
And so he has this quote that I dug up. I was looking for how does he think about the world, and he writes this: in order to engage in an experience of the world, one has to physically move oneself to the most diverse places on earth. The viewer should enter my work through their own eyes and their own lives. So my text starts here. We agreed that life is eclectic. And we wondered, how can we depict eclecticism and still stay on a pathway? And you wrote to me, and I wrote back to you. We had a nice exchange. I answered that if you're always late, you're on time. Meaning, if the pictures are going to be entirely different each time, not having a pathway becomes a pathway. How does Tillman's quote about experiencing the world by physically moving oneself to different locations align with your sentiments? Where do you see a potential difference in your method of expressing these ideas that would lead us elsewhere and capture your own personal story or journey?
One thing I know for sure is that I have done a lot of traveling, and I have gained perspectives on things that I never would have been interested in if I hadn't gone to that country or met those people or looked at this ghost village in Tuscany that I ended up taking a picture there that I'll never forget what it was like. And the thing was that I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but I saw some things in the picture afterwards that I didn't even notice.
Right, okay.
When I was taking the picture. But I feel like I sat in a cafe and an Italian man came up. He had one tooth in his mouth.
Right.
And he said, "I'm looking for my Desdemona. Do you want to get me some wine?" And he let me take a photograph of him. And
Right.
and so all these things, I do look at them in a fresh way when I travel or even when I'm in new places.
Mm-hmm.
But I get bored if I do the same thing all the time.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know if that fits what you think.
Well, I think there's a second layer here where I know a little bit of what I would surmise could be part of the answer to this kind of question. What makes it different? That's what I'm looking for here, and I sense it. And this story you just said about to get the glass of wine, that the way that you frame your pictures and the way that information is taken away, from the essential thing that you're showing in these totally diverse pictures, maybe the pathway is in there, in that sense that the focus of the narrative is in the picture. We don't know the narrative.
Right. That's
we don't
right.
know the narrative, but at some point, an intelligent and an excited viewer looking at your work will say, "Why do I like every picture?" Right? And it's possible that maybe that's where it is. It's in that feeling that the thing that sometimes in our own experience in life that we suddenly we recall that's specific to us alone, that you have that flavor in those pictures, that you saw it at that moment. There is a story behind it. You're not going to give us the story, but you're going to give us a fantastic pictures. And sorry, we're not going to be on any pathway here. We're just going to let the pathway be that experience, so that maybe each of us in our own lives would start to give more importance to the little special things that are included in it.
But they're mundane in some ways, but then they become special. And while you were talking now, I had this analogy, like when you love someone, it's like there's this electric connection.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm taking a picture, it's almost like I feel a connection that I don't feel like with another picture that I would take right next to it. If I have that connection, then it becomes special. And let other people define it the way it affects them.
And your audience, maybe for your audience, it becomes a question of trust, meaning that you are showing us the things that do matter. Right? And so which would, to me, it takes it away from the Tillmans immediately, right? Where maybe it's more illustrative in some way, but of ideas and philosophies or whatever. I don't know the work that well, but this idea, where I'm getting at with this question, is the uniqueness of what you're doing and how to continue it and identify something about it, that maybe this just off the top of the head, maybe that comment about if you're always late, maybe there's a reason for that and we don't know it, right? And that's why somebody's always late.
I used to always be late.
My wife gets at me for that too. But it's that personal thing that we feel in the image that could be the hidden thing that we've been looking for during the workshop, and somehow in this little conversation in real time that we're putting a finger on it.
Right. Well, I also learned from the comments you made to the other students. I mean, I think we're all saying that by critiquing someone and saying, take this guy out or get tighter on this, whatever, we all ask ourselves, how does that apply to us?
Right.
So I think even though at first I felt I was being too much of a challenge to you because I wasn't the power of 3 that it felt like everyone else was. And then I realized that, no, I could have that.
You do have that.
And I didn't at first I didn't think I did.
Yeah, no, I remember when you first came in, I had that feeling that, okay. But I also had great respect for what you submitted, and I knew you were a photographer and would be a great contribution, as well everyone has been to the workshop.
Everyone has made great contributions.
But I wish you really good luck on this eclectic journey. Thank you.
Well, you'll be aware of it.
Yeah, I will.
I'll
know.
I hope you'll.
I'll know. There goes one of them.
Right. I hope you'll permit me to let you know how I'm doing and
of course.
What I'm doing. It means a lot to me.
So in Finnish, I say kiitos, which is thank you.
You so much.
This thing.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Optics, featured artists in the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM. The Power of 3 is on the walls of WinCAM until June 30th and is free and open to the public during WinCAM's regular hours of operation. WinCAM is located at 32 Swanton Street. For more information on the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM or other programs offered through the Griffin Museum, please log on to our website at griffinmuseum.org. Thanks for watching.